This podcast is a Believe Network and Siete production.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is, again, and I keep saying this every time I keep getting guests on this show that are super cool, but this is one of the coolest guests that I'm going to have on this podcast. This man's career in the WWF, WWE spanned 22 years as a referee, and I'm pretty sure that it also involves some ring crew stuff too as well. But he has his daily ref and rant on Twitter/X. He also has Reffing It Up podcast with Brian Hebner, and he has his book out, which is called The 3 Count: My Life in Stripes as the WWE Referee. It's Edge wrote the foreword. This is the legendary Jimmy Korderas. Thank you so much for joining us. How are you, sir?
I'm good, Derrick. I'm really, really good. And by the way, he's Adam Copeland now. We don't.
Oh, well, Yeah.
Like, hey, you don't want to get fined by the EVPs, brother.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's crazy. I was actually at SummerSlam '98 when he was Sable's mystery partner. So I got to see the very, very beginning of an incredible Hall of Fame career and one of my absolute favorite professional wrestlers in the world.
Mine too, and a good friend, and also, hey, us Canadian guys, we stick together. You know how it is.
From British Columbia all the way over to the farthest east, whether it's New Brunswick, you guys are all sticking together no matter what.
Yeah, you can even add Newfoundland in there.
Newfoundland, Nova Scotia.
As far as I know, actually, Newfoundland, little piece of trivia, not wrestling related. They're the only time zone that I'm aware of that has a half-hour time difference.
Are you serious?
Yes, like right here on the East Coast where I'm at in Toronto, let's say it's 8 p.m. It's 9 p.m. on the Atlantic Coast in Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, but
right.
It's 9:30 in Newfoundland. I don't get it.
That's interesting. That's a nice piece of trivia here on the D-Lew Podcast. But speaking of Toronto, obviously your hometown and where you grew up. So talk about growing up in the beautiful city of Toronto.
Well, it's a great city. It's a great multicultural city. Every kind of culture has their own little location. You have your Greek town, you have your Little Italy, you have your Caribbean section, all that sort of stuff. Polish section. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, especially growing up, because I grew up right outside of Greektown, right in Greektown, pretty much, because of Greek heritage. My dad had a garage on the right in the heart of Greektown, a Texaco station, and a repair shop there. And growing up, since I was a kid, we were blessed in Toronto to have plenty of wrestling on television. Yes, I grew up a hockey fan as well. How can you not when you're in Toronto?
Yes.
As one of the few people who's still alive, the last time the Maple Leafs won the cup, but that's another story for another day. But we had so much wrestling to watch on television. Obviously we had Maple Leaf Wrestling, which was the Tunnies promotion here in Canada.
Yes.
It was very the territories,
Of course.
We also got a lot of talent from the Mid-Atlantic region, which they used, the Tunnies did at that time. We got the WWF show from the Buffalo affiliates, and we had international wrestling from Montreal on one of the other local channels, and we would get AWA wrestling on one channel in the afternoon, and then we'd get Calgary Stampede wrestling even, and we had just a smorgasbord of wrestling. I talked about hockey. Saturday nights, my dad and I would watch the Maple Leafs on Hockey Night in Canada, and afterwards at 10:30 p.m. they would have an hour of All-Star Wrestling from Vancouver on.
Oh wow!
So we were getting everything here, and I ate it all up. I couldn't get enough of it. And then when I was finally old enough to go down to the Maple Leaf Gardens on my own, because I didn't have to rely on my big brother to take me or anything like that.
Right.
Because my dad would never go to wrestling. He loved it, but he couldn't he couldn't handle hanging in the crowd. You know what I mean? It was not his thing. Right. So my big brother took me down a few times, and then when I finally got my own license, was able to drive, I took myself down.
Wow, that's awesome when you're talking about, the territories, and I'm old enough to actually remember it was kind of the tail end of the territories as it was
Mhm.
coming to the end. Obviously, in the province of Ontario, the Tunnies, that was their territory. Then obviously
Mhm.
in the province of Quebec, you had the Rougeaus, that was their territory. And then of course, if you further west you go, that's where basically
Mm.
Stampede and the Hearts, and you
Yep.
sprinkle a little AWA because Vern would travel in and out of there as well.
Mhm.
So it was a lot. And to your point, even though back then, when because you're a little older than me, not too much, but you're a little older than me, we still had wrestling, but not as much as everyone has now, where it's at our fingertips on our phones, television, smart devices, etc. There was still a lot of professional wrestling on television. So it's good to again let modern fans know that, hey, this wasn't the Stone Ages. There was a lot of professional wrestling on, and due to the territory system.
There was a lot of, and again, with the advent of television, then cable came into play. And
Right.
cable, then you got your World Championship Wrestling, your Georgia Championship Wrestling before that.
Hmm.
So cable was a big factor in the expansion of wrestling in the territories as well. But
Right.
at the same time, that's when I think someone by the name of Vince McMahon had a vision, thinking, okay, here's something that his vision was to take it global. Well, first national, you know,
Right.
to uh, to unfortunately kind of eat up the territories, but
Yeah.
at the same time, he again he had a vision to make it a bigger than life spectacle, because at the time, uh, like it or not, wrestling was kind of viewed as that carny kind of thing that a lot of people said, oh
Sideshow. Yeah.
yeah, that's how a lot of people that weren't wrestling fans viewed it,
Right.
and also even media kind of blew it off a little bit.
Hmm.
But you know, a lot of athletes in baseball and football were closet wrestling fans at the
Big
time. You know what I
time.
mean? Yeah. So
100%.
and Vince knew that, so he tapped into that audience and figured out a way to enter the mainstream. And he found a guy by the name of Hulk Hogan who just people just gravitated to him
We took it
because
we took it
people
into orbit.
yeah, and from there on, it's history.
Yeah, seriously. And you were talking about Maple Leaf Gardens, with Maple Leaf Wrestling and everything. And
Mhm.
anytime people mention the Maple Leaf Gardens, I get the visual of that dimly lit arena with that long aisle, you know what I mean? The long
Yeah.
aisle. And when I used to watch primetime wrestling with Bobby the Brain and Gorilla Monsoon, God rest their souls. And I could just do, we're gonna take it to the Maple Leaf Gardens, and it'll be Iron Mike Sharp
Mhm.
versus Dino Bravo or something like that.
Mhm.
So when people talk about the Maple Leaf Gardens, this American appreciates that because that was an iconic building for professional wrestling, and you had a bird's eye view of watching it.
Yeah, absolutely. And you talk about that ramp. When I first started going down to as a fan, I went to the office to see if I can get like what was the equivalent of season tickets, and I talked to Norm Kimber, who was Jack Tunney's right hand man, and said, sir, I come down to every show, and I like taking pictures of the guys when they're entering because they had that ramp which elevated them, which allowed you to get some good shots. You didn't have to fight your way through the crowd to get
Exactly.
those shots.
Right.
And he said, "You know what? I got 2 tickets for you, but if you miss one show, you're gonna lose them." I said, "Don't worry about it. I'm not missing any shows here." And they ran every 3 weeks like clockwork because they ran Maple Leaf Gardens on Sundays every 3 weeks, and then on the
Hmm.
Mondays, they would do the Brantford Civic Center in Brantford, Ontario, where they do wrestling challenge tapings, 3 weeks worth of tapings.
Okay.
So that's why they had that 3-week cycle. So I would go down to the shows and I would take pictures of the boys. And they had a back when you had to actually develop your film, they had a
Right.
place up here. They had a place up here called Direct Film, and you would double your prints for $1. So for $1, you'd
Mm.
get second set of prints. So that's
Right.
what I did. And I kept one set of prints for myself. And I would take the other set to the next show and I would sell them for $2 a pop. And that way it was fueling my wrestling habit. I was paying for my ticket, I was paying for my parking, I was paying for all that stuff, and maybe a little extra on the side. But because of that, it actually got my foot in the door with wrestling.
And that was going to be my next question. And by the way, the entrepreneurial spirit as a young man, you got to love it, right? Find a way to make a buck. There it is.
Hey,
So when you're, so you obviously you're, you building a relationship, with with the office and that type of stuff. How did you get involved? Were you looking to train to wrestle, or were you just saying, "Hey, I think this referee thing might be my way in"?
I just wanted to get in. I didn't know how. I didn't have a plan. Like I wanted to wrestle. I wanted to referee. I just knew that I wanted to be a part of this business in some form or fashion. Like I said, I was
Hmm.
taking pictures, and the fellow who used to take the pictures for the programs at Maple Leaf Gardens, his name is Elio Zarlenga, who worked for Jack
Hmm.
Tunney. I didn't know who he was, and he approached me outside Maple Leaf Gardens. This was before I even had an idea who he was, and says,
Right.
"Hey, you got some pictures there?" I said, "Yes, yes, I do." He says, "Can I take a look at them?" He said, "Sure." So he's flipping through the pictures. He's looking at them, going, he's nodding. I said, "Hey, you take some pretty good pictures here. You selling them?" I said, "Yeah." "How much are they?" I said, $2 a pop. He says, "You can't do that." And I'm like, "What do you mean I can't do that?" He says he started going through all this. It's a copyright infringement. I'm the fellow who takes the pictures for the program. You can't do this. This is illegal and all that. And I started to panic. I'm like, okay, not only am I going to lose my seats, I'm going to go to jail here or something.
Oh
You know what
man.
I mean?
Oh
And
wow.
I think he saw the panic in my face, and he said, "You know what? You don't seem like a bad dude. I'll tell you what. Take your pictures. You want to sell them? Go down the block a little bit instead of doing it right outside Maple Leaf Gardens where everybody could see you." And I said, "Thank you. I appreciate it very much." And over the time, we developed a rapport.
Right.
And then he said, "You know what? You really do take some pretty good pictures. So I'm going to talk to Jack and see if I can bring you on board as a photographer to help me shoot pictures for the program and the magazine." I said,
Okay.
"Oh, that'd be great." So he introduced me to Jack, and we had a nice little talk. But he said, "You know what? We don't need another photographer, but we'll find something for the kid to do." And I started off running errands, whatever needed to be done.
Mhm.
Hey, you know what? He'd hand me the keys to his Fleetwood Cadillac, and he'd say, "Like, go to the airport Marriott and pick up Hogan and his wife." And I'd be like, "Yes, sir." And inside, I'm like a little kid going, "Oh my God, I'm going to go pick up Hogan and his wife. Are you kidding me?" And
Right, right.
this big Cadillac with the fins, the old school '84
Oh yeah.
Cadillac,
Hmm.
and that was it. And then getting to be backstage, I also developed a rapport with a lot of the producers like Jack Lanza
Hmm.
and particularly Pat Patterson. Pat Patterson, great, hilarious. You talk about guys who are funny almost 24/7. He's the guy. So after a few months of doing that, Pat comes up to me and says, "Hey, how long you been working for Jack now?" And I said, "Yeah, I don't know, close to a year or something like that, maybe a little more." And he says, "Jack," he calls Jack over. He's like, obviously he doesn't go to Jack. He says, "Jack, come here." He says, "We got the kid here. He's running around. He's running all these errands for us. He's doing all these things. But during the show, he's kind of sitting around waiting. Why don't we use him? Why don't we make him a referee?" And Jack says to him, "But do we want to smarten the kid up?" And he says, "But Jack,
Mm.
he's in the locker room with the boys. Kind of has an idea what's going on here." So, you know what I mean?
Right,
Uh,
right, right.
So Pat told me, he says, "Get yourself black sneakers, black pants, a blue shirt, and a black bow tie. Carry it with you at all times." And I was like, "Okay, I'm doing it." So I did, but I didn't know enough to go to people and ask, "Okay, I'm going to start refereeing soon, but how do I do this? What am I supposed to do? What does the job entail?"
Right.
And just one time, randomly at a house show here in Newmarket, Ontario, just north of Toronto, Chief Jay Strongbow was the lead agent that show, and he used to call me, "Jimmy Jam, you got your ref gear with you?" I said, "Yes, I do, Chief." He says, "Put it on. You're refing tonight." I went, "Okay." And I wasn't going to tell him, "Hey, I've never refed a match before. I don't know what to do." So he says, "Okay, you're going to ref SD Jones versus the Red Demon, who is Jose Luis Rivera
Right,
under
right.
ice." And SD and I were good buddies. So I walked up to SD and I said, "Hey, SD, I got some good news and bad news." He says, "Well, what's the good news?" I said, "I'm reffing your match tonight." He said, "Oh, awesome. What's the bad news?" I said, "I'm reffing your match tonight." He goes, "What do you mean?" I said, "I've never reffed a match before. I don't know." He says, "You know what? Stay close to me. I'll talk you through it. You'll be fine." And got through the first match, and that's when the light bulb went on. I got to ask
Mm.
questions. I got to find out what's going on. So I would talk to the veteran referees who at the time up here were like John Bonello and Wayne Cashman. Got
Mhm.
to run into guys like Timmy White and that sort of thing, and Dave Hebner at the time.
Okay, right.
And yeah, and just pick their brain. And I asked them, "Please watch my matches. Tell them what I'm doing wrong. What I need to improve on, and that sort of stuff." And it started there.
It's funny because a lot of times, especially in that era when people were when they were starting out, they may have been thrown a referee like Jim Ross was a referee. That's
Mm-hmm.
how he got started. And it was the whole smartening up. Do we smarten the kid up? Because, the big secret back then. No one wanted to expose the business. We understand that. So it was just it's a lot of parallels and it's a lot of similarities to people that were starting out back then. They weren't wrestling, but said, hey, we'll find something to do. Hey, get a referee's uniform and there you go. So
Mhm.
what was your relationship like with Jack Tunney? Because again, a kid that was growing up in the 80s, I thought that Jack Tunney was the president of the World Wrestling Federation. I'm thinking
Right.
this guy is the be all end all. You didn't see him often, but whenever he made an announcement, it was important. But as a boss, head of a territory, what was your relationship like with Jack? And what as far as what do you think of him, as a booker and as a friend?
Well, I think the world of Jack. He was very stern as a boss. He when it was came down to business, he meant business, but at the same time, he didn't really. He wasn't so authoritative in a stern sense.
Mm-hmm.
Like he wasn't like he didn't get on your ass for doing. If you messed up, he call you. Hey, come here. Just go over there and think about what you did, and then come back and talk to me, and I'll tell you what you did wrong. That kind of
Mm-hmm.
stuff.
Right.
I and over time, I was the guy how I got my foot in the door working television because I was just basically working, the Ontario and Canadian shows when WWF came up here. And
Right.
then he had eye surgery done. So he used to drive to any TVs he could because most of the TVs were done in the Northeast, United States mostly. And when they started, traveling around to like Albany and Glens Falls and places, Allentown, Pennsylvania, places like that.
Right.
So he would drive, and he had Billy Red Lions, who was basically a sidekick, but he didn't like Billy driving his Cadillac. So he says, I got another job for you if you're interested. I said, what's that? He says, when we go to TVs, do you mind driving me to TVs? He says, I'll pay you like I normally do. I said, yeah, absolutely. That would be great. And now I'm thinking, oh, that'd be cool. I can hang out at TVs and stuff. He said, bring your ref gear with you because, Pat's at all the TVs and he knows you're refing now. So that's how I got my foot in the door. I started going to TVs with Jack, and they said, "Oh yeah, that's right. You got your ref gear. Put it on. You're working TV tonight." I'm like, "Okay, now it's a re-education because working TV is different from working house shows. You got
Absolutely.
you got to learn camera positioning and that sort of stuff. And that was before the time where we had the IFBs and the earpieces where they can actually
Right.
talk to you. So now you're having to creatively glance at the timekeeper who's giving you hand signs for time cues, and the go
Right.
home sign was the magic pencil in the mouth. When you saw that, you said, okay, guys, go home.
Wow. Or I heard a story of Gorilla Monsoon walking down the aisle. If you saw him, you knew it was time to go home.
Oh, oh,
I've heard that
oh,
story before.
yeah. Not only him, Jack Lanza was the best because he'd come walking down the aisle waving that tie like crazy. And okay, guys, I guess it's time to go home.
Incredible. So obviously, now that you got your eyes on you, from Pat Patterson. So was it that got you to transition into a full-time referee at that point, or was it still just making just those trips whenever they were doing just TVs?
It was pretty much just when I was traveling with Jack doing the TVs because they had, God bless him, Joey Morella. They had Danny
Yeah.
Davis. They had guys. They had their referees, and a lot of states had their commission referees. They had to have at least one commission referee on the show. So
Mm,
there was a lot of referees. So I understand the reasoning why. But when I was there, they used me, which was kind of cool. And then it took a few years before it transitioned into, okay, you know what? We're going to bring him in for every TV. So they did their due diligence for getting me the proper permanent work papers as opposed to special exceptions for going down. And from there on, I guess it was history for me. Anyways, that was amazing.
and I mean, that time in the 80s, as we like to call it, the golden era, of the 80s, and when you
Mhm.
had stars like, Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, the One Man Gang, the Big Boss Man, Greg the Hammer Valentine, the list goes on and on. Andre the Giant, the $1 Million Man, all of these Hall of Fame personalities.
Mhm.
What was it like being around that at that time, being very young in the business?
It was one of those deals where when I was working in the ring with these guys, I had to keep myself in check
Mhm.
because at the same time, I'm thinking this is the most amazing thing in the world, but oh my God, look who I'm in here with. And
Right.
then you start thinking, okay, forget that, get that out of your brain because you got a job to do. And so
Mhm.
at times I thought I was if when I see an old clip of something or other, I look too laid back because I'm trying so hard not to look overly excited, but inside I'm like, I'm ready to jump out of my skin. You know what I mean? But
Right.
getting to actually uh, pal around with them afterwards, that sort of thing. For example, like an Andre the Giant. If Andre liked you and you were in his good books, oh my goodness, you were treated like gold by him. And thank goodness I was on his good side. But that also meant Andre's the type of guy who was very generous with offering daddy sodas, as Dave LaGreca likes to call them.
Of
And
course. Shout
and
out to Dave LaGreca,
yeah,
Busted Open Radio. Absolutely. Big
yeah,
fan.
me too, me too. Love Dave. And
Hmm.
Andre was the kind of guy that you never said no.
Right.
You can't say no. So, he can handle it a lot better than pretty much anybody else. So,
Right.
he'd be still standing when half the bar is kind of ready to pass out.
Right. Right. So around that time, as you're starting to get your feet wet, as you start to, make the towns and that type of thing, what was the best piece of advice you could either give the person's name or you could leave them anonymous? What was the biggest piece of advice someone gave you about being in the business?
It was probably Jack Lanza who gave me the best piece of advice is always be a sponge. Always keep learning. Never stop asking questions without being a nuisance. Just,
Of course.
you know what I mean? But pick your spots and ask questions and make sure that you listen to what they say and understand what they say as opposed to just, okay, I got you. You know what I mean?
Right.
I think that's, and I don't mean to pick on this generation right now, but I feel a lot of them are looking for a pat on the back instead of a kick in the ass. See, I always wanted that kick in the ass. Tell me what I can do better. If they
Right.
said, okay, you did this good, you did this good, great. What did I do that wasn't good? I was always looking, I was my own harshest critic. You know
Right.
what I mean? So
Right, right.
that was the
And we're
best
gonna
piece of
get into
advice. Yeah.
the ref and rant and stuff because as far as some of the
Yeah.
things that I've seen that I totally agree with you on, and we'll talk about in a bit. But you mentioned some names, Dave and Earl Hebner,
Mhm.
Danny, Dangerous Danny Davis, uh, Jack Doan, Mike Chioda, Tim White. That crew of referees,
Mhm.
legendary. I mean, my thing is there should be a wing in the Hall of Fame for you guys. Talk about the camaraderie with you guys, the Zebra crew of the referees during that era.
It
Of
was it
course, I
was
can't
an
forget about Joe, and I can't forget about Joey Morell. I can't forget about him either.
no, of course not. No, Joey, God bless him. Who girl and I, when I had hair back then, and Joey and I, really quickly, WrestleMania 4, we're bringing the trophy down for the
Yeah,
Battle Royal. And the day before, we were doing the rehearsal to make sure we were cool with getting the trophy down there, and I'll get the logistics down. Girl was basically, all right, the bookends will take the trophy down to ring, and we'll go from there. And that's me and Joey walking down because he said a lot of people couldn't tell us apart. I could, you know. But yeah, no, we had a great camaraderie. There wasn't any. Uh, I can't believe he's doing this match and I'm not.
right.
You know what I mean? Or wasn't that? We knew
Hmm.
who the senior official was. After that, it didn't matter. As long as you got the guy, you got whether it was Dave, whether it was Earl, or even if it was Timmy, you let those guys handle the main event because they're the experienced ones. They're the ones who can handle the job, and the guys trust in that position. That's fine. We can do the other stuff and we could eventually, hopefully, get to that spot. But for me, it wasn't all about refereeing a main event, it's for doing my job properly where the company could count on me to be in any spot as opposed to
Right.
just one.
Right. And when I look and there are times, trust me, when I'm looking back at old, I'm still trying to get the lingo of premium live event, but I'm a pay-per-view guy. I grew up in the pay-per-view era, and I'm looking at previous, SummerSlams, WrestleManias, and it was just an energy it was a commanding energy that you guys had in the ring. And we'll talk about the art of refereeing and what it means. Talk about being that third man in there and how important it is to be seen but not be seen.
Right. That's the major misconception for referees. The referee's job is, like you said, to be invisible until you need to be seen. And your job is to help the talent tell their story without
Mhm.
trying to be a part of the story, unless there's a spot in there or an angle that requires you to be that. But other than
Right.
that, You are a silent, and you are quiet until you're asked to speak in that sense. So you're the conduit between the talent. You're passing messages back and forth between them. For example, if they take a bump, they're on the ground selling. Someone might look up at you and he says, "Tell them to get up, shoot me off, duck a line, and cross body," or something like that. And you got to
Right.
pass that on, but you got to do it in a way that it doesn't look like you're just walking over and passing a message. It's got to be kind of
Mm,
in the motion of enforcing rules or doing your job as a referee, whether you're checking on talent, that sort of thing. You're also passing messages from the gorilla position, where not only do you get times, you will get some instruction from them as well. And you're going to have to pass that and do the same thing. Pass it in a way where it doesn't look like you're overtly giving them cues
right.
and that sort of thing. But at the same time, there's other things you need to do. The biggest thing I have a gripe with nowadays is rules, and most of the guys understand that there are rules and they know how to work around them so that the rules are implemented. But a lot of
Mhm.
times now I see that rules are just thrown away and wasted and egregiously broken without any repercussions. And the term I hate nowadays is referee's discretion. That drives me insane when I hear that. What's the referee's discretion? Outside the ring, it's a 10 count,
Right.
right? So what? I'm going to start counting about 5 minutes after they're out there. I mean, what's the
Yeah.
discretion? It's in football. Um, somebody, if there's a pass interference call, well, I saw him. Well, he tripped. He didn't mean to bump into him and cause him not to catch the ball. But you know what? I won't throw the flag because he didn't mean to. You know, the guy was offside, but he tried to jump back and didn't quite make it. But
Right.
yeah, if you're going to treat it like a sport, the referee has to look authoritative in a way where he's not jumping down everybody's throat, but he's enforcing rules, and that's how heels get heat. When the referee's enforcing rules and he's manipulating those rules to his advantage, or manipulating the referee to circumvent those rules or cheat behind their back without
Right.
making the referee look bad and look like he is being manipulated and making the heel look like a smart guy by doing it, then the heat goes to the right place. You don't want the heat placed on the referee because that heat has lost them, if that makes sense.
Psychology. It's a
Yeah.
simple it's a simple psychology that people can say, oh, it's old school, but old school stuff still works.
Mm-hmm.
It's you got a heel and you got a baby, and of course the heel has to do his or her job to get the baby over. And how and what makes a heel? Doing horrible things,
Yeah.
doing something behind the ref's back, raking the eyes,
Mm-hmm.
a low blow, whatever it is. That's the simple psychology of it. And
Yep.
to your point, and we'll, like I said, we're going to talk about your ref and rant in a little bit, but understanding, and I think everyone being on the same page
Mm-hmm.
is the key also in with the referee crew, and understanding that. I'm at the Monster Factory as a ring announcer, and
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that Danny Cage preaches is just consistency across the board when it comes to that,
Mm-hmm.
even the cadence and when you're
Yes.
counting. You know what I mean? It
Mm-hmm.
can't be, oh, you're gonna do it fast and I'll just do a little slow. No, that thing has to be, just as consistent as everything else.
You're absolutely right, and that's the proper way to teach and instruct the new referees nowadays who are still in the learning process. I watch and I'm still learning stuff. I mean, like
Mhm.
it doesn't matter how long you've been in the business, you don't know it all, and the business does change and evolve. It doesn't change 100%. It doesn't go 180 the other way. Like you said, old school still works today, but you can incorporate some new school. The two can mesh together,
Sure.
and that's your evolution. You don't throw one away to say this is evolution. That's not evolution. That's no, not de-evolution. What's the opposite? Regression.
Right.
Regression. That's the word I'm looking for. They can coexist. It's just some people think that okay. I'll give you an example. A lot of people say, well, the days of heels and baby faces is passe, and I don't think it is because yes, you can have a banger of a match with two guys who are baby faces or two guys who are heels. But if everybody likes everybody, then who do I want to see get their ass beat?
Exactly.
And how are you going to sell a ticket on that premise? You want to see some? I'll give you an example, perfect example.
Mhm.
Some guy who's doing it right now, MJF.
Mhm.
I think he's doing it right. Yes, he came back. He got the monster pop. He got the monster reaction. People love him. People love him. And everybody's thinking, Yeah, but how's this guy going to be as a heel? Everybody loves him so much. Guess what? The last 2 weeks, what did he do? He got
Made
the
you hate
people
him
to
again.
turn him. Yes. Why? If I could use the language here, he's a prick.
100%.
And he's not only a prick to the talent, he's a prick to the people out there. And he said, all the verbiage he's using, I'm going to paraphrase, like, I'm not doing this because I'm not like this because of them. I'm because of this. I'm like this because of you, the people. You made me like this. So F you, basically.
Yeah, it was a hell of a promo the other day, and I was just listening, and a lot of conviction and making you realize, oh, I'm really doing this because of you. I tried to become one of you.
Mm-hmm.
I became vulnerable, and it doesn't work for me.
Right.
And now I'm back on the trail of reclaiming what's rightfully mine. It was a damn good promo, and I loved every second of it. Now, being a part of WrestleMania, is special. And I would imagine your first WrestleMania would have been WrestleMania 4. And to your point, you and Joey bringing out the trophy for the 20-man battle royal, in which the late great Sika, that was his last WrestleMania. God bless Sika. And
good man, what a great man. He was awesome.
I've never met him, but I took a picture of him at WrestleMania 29. But from what I understand, he was a really, really good, really, really good guy. Being a part of WrestleMania itself as a referee, obviously it went from, arenas, eventually going to obviously WrestleMania 6 Sky Dome. You did two visits there, 6 and 18. And then of course you got the Hoosier Dome, and you're having all these venues that you guys are going to for WrestleMania. Being in the ring for WrestleMania as a referee, take me through it as far as what's going through your mind as you're saying, I am a part of history right now.
Yeah, you're looking out at the crowd, and it's mesmerizing. It really is. And again, like I say, you have to bring yourself back to reality and say, look, I got a job to do. I got a job to do. But as you're looking around, you go, but this is freaking amazing. It's incredible. And then you start seeing that whoever you're working with, whoever you're refereeing, and they're coming down to the ring, those grand entrances and stuff like that. You're awestruck with the pageantry. And people like to say, oh, that's too much Hollywood. Yeah, great, give it all to me. I want it to look as grand as it can possibly be, so people can say, you know what, this is a big deal. And it is a big deal, not only for the talent that is getting to participate in WrestleMania, for us that we get to participate as officials in WrestleMania. It's a big deal for us too. So it works for everybody, and even everybody from the ring announcer to the announce team to everybody backstage to the camera people to the audio people. It's a long day, a few days for them, but at the same time,
for sure,
they love it.
So if you can give me your favorite WrestleMania matches that you refereed yourself, if you can name a few of those WrestleMania matches and what stood out to you as far as those matches being special.
Obviously WrestleMania 17, the TLC match, being there real up close and getting to see that, and one of the most memorable. See, I can't even speak English. I'm thinking about it now, and I've got this picture in my mind of Jeff hanging there from
the edge, doing the spear.
Oh my God! And the job of a referee in those matches, first and foremost, is the safety of the talent. When they take it something like that, you got to check.
Agreed.
And that sort of stuff. So that was incredible, because that was, if I'm not mistaken, their third TLC match, and every TLC match they had elevated the bar. And that one, that was a big, for everyone that came after that, top that if you can, kind of thing. Of course, for me, the biggest match I've ever refereed at WrestleMania, Edge and Undertaker in WrestleMania 24. Very special to me for a few reasons, not only because it was the main event, but it was also because I was actually requested for that match by the talent. So that meant even more to me, but it also put a little added extra pressure on me, to be honest with you, because I want to say it was about a week before, or maybe 2 weeks, because I was scheduled for the ladder match, and at that WrestleMania I was kind of tagged as the ladder match referee because they had confidence in me to do those matches, which was fine. I'm cool with anything, And Edge and I were at TV, and he just comes up and he says, "Hey, you got a second?" I said, "Sure." He says, "What's up?" He says, Taker and I want you to referee our match at WrestleMania. I said, really? He said, yeah, no, we want you to be in there for us. And I said, that's awesome, but I don't make the decisions. He says, oh, no, don't worry. We'll get it done. I said, "Oh, if you guys want it." Then I ran into Taker. He said, did Edge talk to you? I said, yes, sir. And he says, are you cool with that? And I'm like, why is he asking me if I'm cool with that? Are you serious? Of course I'm cool with this. I said,
Right.
yeah. I said, yeah, I'll do my best. He says, I know you will. That's why we want you there. Cool. And then we did the talk through the day before. The Saturday we're sitting in the green room, Edge,
Mhm.
Taker, Michael P.S. Hayes, who was the producer / agent for the match, and myself, and they're
Mhm.
going over things, and I'm just listening there, and I'm going, yep, this is going to be awesome. Then Michael says to me, he says, Jimmy, we want to bump you and take you out of the match, like bump you so you're persona non grata. Are you cool with that? I said, yeah, of course I am. He said, do it. And then Taker says, are you cool with taking a big boot? Yeah, are you kidding? Take my head off. I don't, you know what I mean? This is
Right.
WrestleMania, and I'm taking a bump from Taker.
The main event for the world
Yes.
title. Absolutely.
Sign me up all day for this. And then the discussion went from, okay, we're cool. We got you taken care of. You're out of the picture. We need another ref to come down to finish the match. Who are we going to get to run down that ramp? Because it was like 75 yards from the,
Yeah. Citrus Bowl, that
everybody.
was a huge
Yeah.
ramp. Absolutely.
Yeah. So everybody looked at each other, and it was almost, you couldn't have timed it anybody. Everybody at the same time went, Charles. There's nobody else who could make that run, because Charles was the only one in good enough shape to do it. We were like
Right.
joking. We were joking like Kyoto would stop halfway, have a cigarette, relax.
Mhm.
But then that brought on the most iconic referee
Mm.
run-in of all time.
100%.
I've watched it back 100 times, just watching Charlie. Love it, with the hair blowing in the
Go,
wind,
yeah.
diving under that bottom rope, sliding perfectly in position for that false finish. Couldn't have done it any better. Or you couldn't even planned it any better.
That was an amazing WrestleMania. Obviously, that was the same WrestleMania where Ric Flair and Shawn
Yeah.
Michaels had the career-ending match, and that was beautifully done. And that was going to be one of my questions in regards to, have you ever had talent request you to be a referee for the match, but to get the locker room leader
Yeah.
and the world champion, asking, can Jimmy Korderas referee my match? That is a huge badge of honor, of the work that you've done, and just your work ethic. That goes a long way, especially in being dependable as well. That's super important.
Yeah, it is, and I appreciate you saying that. And one of the other things Edge brought up before we got to the match and we were talking, he at WrestleMania 6, which was here in my hometown and his as
Yeah.
well, he was a fan in the crowd. And
Oh yeah.
he says, I remember watching you referee while I was sitting there in the crowd with that frullet going on and the bow tie. And I said, wow, that was incredible. I didn't realize he was there until we talked about it. And then he said, it's only fitting that I have a main event match at WrestleMania. I want you to referee it, and that was really cool.
Talk about that. When you found out that WrestleMania 6 was going to be in your hometown of Toronto, Ontario, Canada, was it a good nervous going out there in front of that 67,678 crowd, at Skydome, sold out to see Hogan and Warrior? What was that like for you, being in your hometown for WrestleMania?
It was great because it was your home. It's my hometown, so I didn't put any added pressure on myself, but at the same time, I was thinking, you know what, I want to represent. You know what I mean? This is
Right.
Toronto. This is my hometown. Anybody because back then they used to name the referees, and there was a spell there for that. They didn't, but they do now, which is kind of cool. I like that.
Yeah.
But we got named, and most people that are from Toronto knew that I was from Toronto because of the days at Maple Leaf Gardens,
Right.
and it was cool. It was really cool, and it was really heartwarming to be able to go out there and just perform in front of everybody there. And it was a few people that would, as you're running down to the ring, going, "Hey Jimmy," and I'm like, "Hey man, cool,"
Yeah, a very young Shane McMahon did the dark match, I believe, for that WrestleMania, correct?
I'm trying to remember that. I was so running around like a chicken with my head cut off backstage trying to get. Yeah, because there was a point there where Robert Goulet was the one who sang the Canadian
Oh,
national
Canada.
anthem.
Yeah, he
Yeah,
did.
and before the show started, Pat Patterson comes up to me and says, "Jimmy, do you know the words to "O Canada"?" I said, "Pat, of course I do. We used to sing them in school every day, but before school started." He says,
Right.
"Can you teach him to Robert Goulet?" I said, "Excuse me?"
The Robert
Yeah, I'm
Goulet.
saying he doesn't know the words to "O Canada." He says, "No, no. Can you come with me?" And he introduced me to him. I said, so I was thinking for a second, and I just thought, Pat, you know what? You know, it might be a good idea. Instead of me trying to teach him the words and him trying to memorize it, because he knew the melody, he just didn't know all the words. I said they have this big, huge jumbotron, they called it, in the Sky Dome. I said, why don't you put the words up there and just follow along like a telestrator? He said, and then Mr. Goulet says, you know what? That'll work. Let's do that. Okay. No. And I was like, Pat was like, okay, your job here is done. Get out.
Wow. And true story, that was the first time that I learned the words to "O Canada" was because of WrestleMania 6. True story.
Oh, really? Well, I
Hmm.
ended up learning the words to the Star Spangled Banner because I was there so often. I knew it better than I knew "Oh Canada."
Amazing, amazing. So you wrote a book, as I alluded to at the beginning of the interview, The Three Count: My Life in Stripes as a WWE Referee. And of course, Adam Copeland, better known as Edge, wrote the forward. Why at that point did you feel it was time to tell your story in regards to, because you know how you got people that write books all the time and they're burying
Mhm.
this one, they're burying that one, but when did you feel it was time and why?
Um, it was actually, believe it or not, my wife's idea. She was the one
Okay.
who presented me with the idea. I'd left WWE in 2009, and I started to embark on a different career because I thought, you know what? I had spent so much time on the road. Maybe this was the right time to kind of distance myself from that kind of lifestyle. And I started
Right.
taking a course in broadcasting and that sort of stuff, and got to meet some Arda Ocal, who's now at ESPN doing a fabulous job. My buddy Arda, call him my little brother.
Hmm.
Um, and he introduced me into the world of broadcasting. And he says, "Well, you still got that passion for wrestling. I'm doing wrestling shows. Come on my show." And we started doing, believe it or not, way back in, I want to say it was 2010, if I'm not mistaken, 2010 or 2011. It was on satellite radio. We used to do a show called Right After Wrestling, which was right after Raw.
Wow.
Yeah. So we would do a live show then every Monday night on on the Score
Score.
radio network.
Hmm.
Yeah. And then he introduced a segment called Ask the Ref, where people can call in and ask questions, and I would answer them live on the air and stuff like that. And that morphed into a television program called Right After Wrestling. Mauro Ronaldo was on it. Of course, Arda and some other Cam Stewart and a few other people. And then eventually, the WWE moved from the Score in Canada and struck up a partnership deal with Sportsnet. And
Hmm.
Sportsnet became the distributor of WWE programming in Canada. And they continued that show, but they wanted a different name for it because wrestling was a taboo word in WWE at the time.
Was
So
score was the score that's where Off the Record used to come on, correct?
yes,
Okay.
yeah, yep. And then so they changed the name from Right After Wrestling to Aftermath.
Got it.
And from there, when someone was off, I was the fill-in guy for the shows there every week. And then they said, you know what? Jimmy's here. He's willing to do it every week. Let's have him do it every week. So I would do it. And we had for a while, there was the regular trio of myself, Renee Paquette, and Art Ocal.
Mm.
And then Renee eventually got a job with WWE. So then Jackie Redmond came in, and we started. It was just three of us again for a while with Arda, and then Arda, went elsewhere. Mr. Kyle Edwards. So it was a rotating crew of people coming in and out. We ended up having Anthony Corelli, aka Santino Morello, was part of the
Santino.
crew. Nug Nargang, the Nugster, and
Hmm.
Carolyn Shved became after Jackie had departed for WWE, had joined the crew. So it was going until COVID hit, and then they kind of shut down the studios, and they said, you know what, we'll put you guys on hiatus, but when everything gets back to normal, we'll revisit the show, but they never ended up bringing it back, and that's too bad because that was a lot of fun.
Wow, wow. Talk about Joey Morella for a
But
second.
oh, sorry.
Go,
Oh,
go,
sorry.
go,
And
go.
to go back, as far as the book goes, yeah, I got off track from the book because that's really what you were talking
Right,
about.
right, right, yeah.
So yeah, it was about that time frame where my wife said, you know what, you should think about writing a book. And even Artis said it as well. He said, you know what, you got stories. You're not out to bury anybody in your book. You just want to tell your story, and you got some good
Right.
stories to tell. Why don't you think about writing a book? So I would come home and I'd think up some stories and I'd write it down. And of course, you know, I'd have my wife read it over and say, "What do you think?" And she'd, you know, give me her critiques, as she always does, whether it's a book or anything else in life.
Right.
but
No matter,
but
hey, no matter what, she's always right.
I found that out quick. Trust me. But yeah, we got something done. Then we had someone. I think I want to say Greg Oliver was the one who read it over, and kind of tighten the screws a little bit. And then we,
Okay.
you know, ECW Press was willing to publish it, and we were off to the races there.
Incredible. And don't forget, you can get the 3 count My Life in Stripes as a WWE referee wherever books are sold. So make sure you get that and support the cause. But I wanted to talk about Joey Morella. Shout out to my boy Bob. He actually went to visit Joey in Gorilla's grave recently in Cinnaminson, New Jersey, you know, to kind of just pay respects.
Mhm.
Talk about that relationship in regards of how he meant, you know, he was a mentor and as a friend, you know, traveling up and down the road.
Yeah, because Joey was great because he was there before I was, so he got the experience in quick, and he picked it up really quick. So he was able to convey what needed to be done in the work of a referee, and because we were so close in age, you know, we palled around, you know, and a young fellow by the name of Tony Chimmel was part of the crew as well at the time he's
Mm-hmm.
in. So it was kind of cool because, you know, he was like, even though we were pretty much the same age, he was like a big brother. He was able to help me out, and then we were able to hang when we, you know, and just not only talk about wrestling, talk about everything, music, talk about movies, talk about TV shows, talk about everything, and just he was a real good guy to hang around with. He was, you know, sorely missed and unfortunately gone way too soon, but really, really, really stand up dude.
Yeah, it was on July 4th, 1994. It was the 30th anniversary of that. And I found out about it, I think about a month or so later in WWF magazine. And
Mhm.
I was like, are you kidding? I was just like, oh wow. So it
Yeah.
was a sad, sad, sad loss for the industry. And
Hmm.
his legacy definitely lives on. Let's talk
Absolutely.
about the Daily Reffin Rant. And
Oh.
obviously, you know, it's the world famous. You know, I like it because it really gives insight, you know, for someone that has been there and done it, you know, at the highest level. And you're giving a fair critique across all companies across the board. How did it start? And I know there's backlash sometimes from, oh, you don't know what you're talking about, or oh, yada yada, you're just hating, or whatever the case may be. So, how did it come to be, and what do you enjoy most about the Daily Ref and Rant and giving your critique on today's refereeing in the world of professional wrestling?
Well, it's interesting. I got to talk about my wife again because how that came about was I would watch wrestling. Always did, always will.
Mm-hmm.
It's never going to leave me. So as I'm watching wrestling, I would see something and go, "Oh, come on, man! Why did they do that? Maybe they
Mm-hmm.
should have done it this way." And my wife is not a fan, but she would hang out every once in a while, and she said, "What was wrong with what they did?" So I'd go in this rant about, you know, they could have done this like this, and I'm. She goes, "You know what? You know, put that on your social media, put it out there." I said, "Yeah, but nobody's interested to hear these long tirades." She goes, "Well, cut it down to about a minute or so. You know, if you can squeeze it into a minute, you know." And I'm like, "You know what? I like to talk, so why not? I could squeeze it into a minute." And the one thing I told her though, somebody might see it and not be happy about it. I said, "Well, so what? Are you being honest?" I said, "Yeah, I'm giving my honest opinion." She says, "Well, then heck with it. Just do what you do." So that's what I did. I started doing it that way, and then I started incorporating other little things, like I'd put on a different T-shirt every day, or have a different coffee mug,
Right.
you know, in the morning or something like that, and or a
Yeah.
hat. Put on a kind of whatever old school wrestling hat or something like that,
Right.
and I have fun doing it. And again, people mistake that I am crapping on everything when I'm not. If I see something that I think could be better, and like I said, tight the screws, think these screws need to be tightened for it to be better. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not saying that completely sucked and they shouldn't have done that. No, I didn't like what they did, and here's why. I figure if I give you a reason why I didn't like it, then okay, you don't have to come at me like I'm hating. And like you said, I critique everybody, and I give
Right.
everybody their flowers when they deserve it too. It's not a one-way street. It's a two-way street. Everybody gets flowers. Everybody gets a little bit of jabs. Let's put it that way. And
Right.
I have fun with it. And the interaction I have on social media, well, most of it is fine. But you get, you know, especially on Twitter,
Oh,
it can be a bad spot. And unfortunately, I have a bad habit of liking to poke poke the bear and push some buttons. And but once there's a line crossed, though, I mean, like there is a line where I'll just say, okay, that's enough. That you cross the line, dude. Click. I don't need any more of
right.
that.
Yeah,
But
you don't need that.
but if I see somebody just going wild, and the funny part is, these guys, oh, what's the matter? Are you all triggered now? I got you triggered. I said, dude, you couldn't get me triggered on your best day, man. But
Right.
I'm just having fun. I'm amusing myself, and they don't get that. But for the most part, most people on there are good and stand up dudes, and they ask questions. Sometimes they'll say, why do you think like that? And I'll try to explain it. It's hard to do in 100 and 200 characters or whatever it is that you're
Right.
allowed, because they took my blue check mark away. Because I under as principal, I will not pay for a blue check mark.
Right. I got you.
Just to me, it's like, okay, that made no sense. But again, I like doing it. I have fun doing it, and I'm going to continue doing it. And if you want to disagree, that's fine. You have your opinion. That's cool. Yeah, we can respectfully disagree. How's that?
Agreed. Agreed. Talk about the business as a whole now. When you see all of these deals that are being made with WWE going to Netflix, and obviously NXT going to CW, and obviously AEW, trying to re-up their deal with with Warner Brothers Discovery.
Mhm.
How do you feel about where the industry has come from? Obviously, you being from the golden era of the 80s and seeing the business going from a national company to a global promotion. Now wrestling is just everywhere.
Mhm.
Talk about the evolution of the business from your perspective.
I think it's evolving in a great way from a business standpoint. I mean, look at you, like you said, WWE signed a monumental deal with Netflix. They're going to become, uh, in the vision that they wanted, a truly global brand. They're going to be seen in, I couldn't even imagine how many countries. They're pretty much all around the world. Their
Mhm.
programming is going to be available to everyone. And AEW is doing well. They hit a little rough spot there, but they're starting to get
Yeah,
it back. They're starting to get it back, which is a good thing. And hopefully they strike their good deal with Warner Brother Discoveries. And I know they're looking at other avenues to show their product, and good for them. You know, uh, when everybody flourishes, then the business as a whole flourishes. And not only those two companies, which are the two main companies, especially here in North America, and the WWE speaking globally, but it's the trickle down effect. TNA benefits from it. NWA, MLW, everybody that's out there gets to benefit from the prosperity of the business as a whole. So anybody who wishes any ill will against a company and wants to see them go away, or that wants to see their demise, they're not a real wrestling fan in
no,
my
they're not.
eyes. They're
No,
not a real wrestling fan. All they are is a a tribalist that wants to cause friction. And yes, I understand if you have a favorite presentation or favorite wrestling style over another one, that's fine. There's nothing absolutely wrong with that. It doesn't mean what they're doing is right and what the other guys are doing is wrong. But from a
right.
business standpoint, there is one that's working big time right now, and one that's not working as well as they could be, in my opinion.
And here's the thing, and a lot of and once again, and I even for me sometimes I have to pump the brakes and say AEW is only a 5-year-old company.
Mm-hmm.
And are they going to be, some stumbling? Absolutely, it is. Are there
Mm-hmm.
going to be growing pains? Yes. But do I want them to fail? Absolutely not.
Absolutely. No.
Especially someone that's in the business now. I want
Mm-hmm.
them to be around. I mean, I
Absolutely.
grew when I was growing up. There was the WWF. There was World Class down in Dallas that I used to get on ESPN. There was AWA that I used to get on ESPN. And there was, Georgia Championship Wrestling Mid-Atlantic, then that turned to NWA, then the WCW. I had all of that on my television, and I wanted my wrestling. I didn't want no companies going away. And this is way before streaming was even thought of. I'm sure Vince may have thought of it, but and I'm sure he would have done WrestleMania on the moon, he probably would have done it. But I'm just saying, it's like I never want any ill will on any wrestling company. I want AEW to strike a huge deal so the guys and the girls can make more money. That's all I'm all about. As long as the boys and the girls are making money and becoming wealthy, that's all that really matters. And if they're putting out a quality product for everybody to enjoy, everybody wins at the end of the day.
Exactly. And I don't understand. Like, obviously, I've been labeled a shill for the WWE because I worked there for so long. And look,
For sure.
do I have a soft spot for them? Of course I do. But it doesn't mean I like everything they do. From a presentation standpoint on TV, from certain angles and something like that, where I look at it and go, man, they could have done that a lot better. Hey, there's nothing wrong with saying that. You know what I mean? And I know I have friends there. I have friends in AEW. Why would I want to see my friends lose their job and not get a pay?
100%.
And people say, well, they can go somewhere else and make money. Yeah, most of them can, but there are some that won't be as easy for them to find a spot because there'll be so many places out there. But you talk about AEW, I forget too sometimes. Now that you brought it up, that they're only a 5-year-old company. I forget that too. But I think now the honeymoon period is over.
Agreed.
They need to understand, and I don't know Tony Khan personally. I've never met him. From my understanding, he's a great guy, and that's great. And he's given people an opportunity to not only ply their trade, but to get paid well for doing it. And hats off to him. I'm happy he can do that. But he also has to be able to listen to those around him that know what it takes to put asses in seats. Yes, it's great to have all these great moments on television, but at the end of the day, you're a television company right now. They don't run house shows. House shows are a moneymaker for your company because your production values aren't as much. Then you basically all you have is the ring setup and whatever you got to pay for trans and talent. That's it. TV is a big production deal. There's a lot of money that goes into putting on a television show. And what I think he has to think about is finding venues that, yes, you want to run the same venues that the big dogs are running, but at the same time, if you're only putting a quarter of the people in those seats, that's a bad look from a perception standpoint from people who are watching. They're saying, well, why is this building so empty compared to the other guys? Run a venue. It doesn't have to be as big. You can run, instead of running an 18,000 seat building, run a 6,000 one, run a 7,000 seat venue, make it look full. The crowd's going to be hot anyways. They always are. Now you've got people going, oh, that looks really cool. Perception is reality. It's a visual business.
Forget what show it was. I don't remember if it was a Collision or a Dynamite, but it was about 6,000 to 7,000 strong in there. It was a smaller venue and it was well lit. And I said, you know what? That should be their business model for right now. And of course, let their pay-per-views. Of course, you want to have a bigger venue. You know what I mean? Obviously, Revolution was Sting's last match. They ran the Greensboro Coliseum. That was a guaranteed sellout. Okay, cool. So if you want to, I think that should be the business model for now as they continue to get their footing. Then eventually, because again, they're still young, and that's all they can do is do this. But is that going to happen every now and then? Yes, but also learn from those mistakes too.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the nature of the business. It's always gone in cycles. Since the beginning of time, the business has gone in cycles. And no one's immune to it. Not even the machine right now. Right now, they're firing on all cylinders. They're hot as hell. They're running out there. They're selling out everywhere. But eventually, you got to think that maybe somewhere down the road, they used to say it goes in 10-year cycles, roughly.
Yeah.
Where you're hot, and then you hit this lull. And people get disinterested for whatever reason it might be, whether they think that the product is not what they want to watch or whatever the reason might be. It just, some people tune out. Then you have to try and lure them back in. Like you said, the problem with AEW is they have to stop thinking of the mindset where, And I've heard it said elsewhere, and I completely 150% agree that they got to stop thinking that what sells tickets is 5-star matches. What sells tickets is dream matches. What sells tickets is randomly putting so-and-so versus so-and-so because this guy's a huge star here and this guy was a huge star here. We put them in the ring together. It's going to be money. No. What that does is cater to a small niche audience who know who these guys are. And to them, it's like, yes, that's a cool matchup. But you don't sell tickets for moments where people just going to go, this is awesome. That doesn't sell tickets. That's nice moments. Sure.
Absolutely.
But it doesn't sell tickets. You know what sells tickets? Right here. Your face. They get invested in characters. Characters sell tickets. Emotion sells tickets. You get people emotionally invested in any story that's going on and take your time with that story and let it develop instead of rushing through it. You don't have, that is where you're going to make your money. Look at the Bloodline story. Going back to those. How long was that storyline going?
We're going on 3.5 years. Almost 4 years right now.
Yeah. And just when you thought it was getting a little stale, what happens? They inject new life into it. Roddy Piper used to say famously, just when you think you got all the answers, I changed
the questions.
Yeah.
Amen.
Yeah.
God bless Roddy. God bless Roddy.
Yes.
You recently took a visit this past weekend as we're recording on a Thursday night. Obviously Money in the Bank, SmackDown, and NXT Heatwave took place in your hometown of Toronto at the Scotiabank Arena. I still call it the ACC just because I'm an adopted Canadian, and I call myself an adopted Canadian. I still call it the ACC. But talk about going back, because I saw you took a picture with Triple H and a few of the boys. Talk about what it's like being able to go back. What's different? What's the same?
The same as the camaraderie. Even though Triple H is now the man in charge, when I got to talk to him for a little bit, it was like nothing had changed. You know what I mean? It was like, hey, how's it going? And he used to call me Corduroy back in the day. What's going on, man? How you doing? He says, what are you dressing up to come see us? And I said, yeah, what the heck? I'm going to look good for the crew. And he says, all those years we didn't see you in a suit. Now you're coming around in a suit. I'm not. It's not a suit. It's just a blazer, and it ain't a salmon blazer. I ain't retiring. So we were just having just a lot of fun, just talking about nothing except fun, good times. Getting to see guys like Randy, getting to see Cody. I hadn't seen in like forever, and of course, all the fellow brothers and sisters in stripes, which was kind of cool. Michael Cole and the trainers and the guys in production and all that the cameramen, everybody from Rico and Stewie and everybody. It was just a blast. It was almost like a homecoming, and they were so welcoming. It was amazing. It was humbling, and I had an absolute blast, and I almost can't wait till they come back, or I'm going to have to go visit somewhere else.
Yeah, I definitely want to visit Toronto soon. That's for sure for a WWE event. I was in LA last year when Timmy White went into the WWE Hall of Fame as far as the Warrior Award winner. He was obviously he was more than just a referee. He was Andre's handler on the road, and I find there's not enough of those referees, you included, not in the Hall of Fame. I think that the referees are just as important as the boys and the girls in the business. Talk about where referees, if they were obviously coming up next year. What's some of referees you can include yourself in that too, that you can see, hey, they deserve a nod in the Hall of Fame?
Well, I appreciate you saying so. It does mean a lot. But first and foremost, in my opinion, Earl and Dave together need to go into the Hall of Fame. They were not only two of the best to ever do it, they were also great mentors, great teachers, and great leaders for all of us who got to follow them. So I think first and foremost, they need to go in. And if you're looking elsewhere, guys like a Tommy Young.
I love Tommy Young. Yes. Yeah. I was a huge Tommy Young mark.
And especially now that the WWE is branching out beyond the doors of the WWE and looking elsewhere to include Hall of Fame talent, I think he should be on that list as well. And there's many others, Kyoto. Hey, why not include all the Hebners? Throw Brian in there too. Yeah. Yeah. If I don't say it, he's going to get hot. So,
Oh, you two have the Reffing It Up podcast. You guys been doing the thing, and obviously you're a contributor to Wrestling Inc. as well.
Mhm.
Legacy. When you think about and you sum it up in regards to your contributions to pro wrestling, and when it's all said and done, if somebody was to come up to you, a total stranger, and say, "Hey, what's your name?" You tell them I'm Jimmy Korderas. You say, "What did you do?" "Oh, I was a pro wrestling referee." What would you tell somebody, a total stranger, what your legacy is in pro wrestling?
If there was a legacy for me, mine, I would hope would be that I was always reliable and did my job to the best of my ability. And I think all the guys that I got to work with know that. I hope they would, at least anyways, but and they knew that I always treated it like it wasn't ever about me. It was
Mhm.
about them, and that they could count on me to be there for them.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, before we get out of here, if you can just give, the people, your social media where they can follow you at
Mhm.
for that ref and rant, ladies and
Mhm.
gentlemen, and also your podcast as well. You can plug everything. The floor is yours.
Well, I appreciate it, Derek. My reference, you can find them on all my social media platforms at Jimmy Korderas on Twitter, at Real Jimmy Korderas on Instagram. And if you happen to, I can't friend any more people on Facebook, which is kind of a bad thing and a good thing at the same time, because most of the people I don't know you, but hey, I'm glad you're there. The Roughing It Up podcast with my good brother in stripes, Brian Hemner. And I got to give a shout out to RJ, who's our producer, holds the glue together. Awesome job. We're having a blast with it, man. We just talk shop, and then we have guests like this week. None other than my old buddy, the man, Coach Jonathan Coachman.
Jonathan Coachman.
Got,
Yeah.
yeah, got to catch up with him and do our thing, and he's awesome. I love Coach, and of course on Wrestling Inc. Usually on Friday, no, not Friday nights, Monday nights after Raw, Wednesday nights after Dynamite, and every once in a while I pinch hit for this post SmackDown show, and I have fun doing that with a rotating crew of guys.
Well, Jimmy, let me just say this, and I've been a fan of pro wrestling now. We're going on 43 years. I was very young when I got into pro wrestling. As a
Mhm.
fan, obviously, I got into the business about 6 years ago as a ring announcer.
Mhm.
But to be able to talk to somebody that I saw as a child and as a referee, got to know your name when Steve Austin said your name when the referees went on strike in
Yeah.
1999. Jimmy
Oh my goodness.
Korderas, come on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
I've I,
God.
I've told
Good,
that
good.
story many times that I accidentally was responsible for that angle where I was the striking referee. Where I was getting married in September of '99, and I went to JR and I said, JR, getting married in September. He says, good. And I said, what are the chances of getting like 2 weeks off for a honeymoon because want to stay married? He says, no, no. JR was super cool. I love JR. He said, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, take it. Yeah, no problem. Take 2 weeks, and when you come back to it. I said, cool. So they ran that angle where the referees went on strike while I was on my honeymoon. And of course, like I said, I went to stay married, so I wasn't watching any wrestling while I was away.
Right, 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 right.
So I come back and everybody's cluing me in on what's going on. I said, man, I missed a lot. They said, yeah, it was only 2 weeks, but you missed a lot. And of all people, I run into Hunter. And Hunter's like, hey, Corduroy, welcome back. How does it feel to be out of a job? Ha, 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 ha. And, and I'm like, well, Hunter, I just got married. I can't afford to go on strike. Ha, 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 ha. He started, okay, come with me. And I was like, where are we going? He said, just come with me. He said, hey, JR, Jimmy had a great idea. And I'm like, I did? I'm like, I don't know what he's talking about right now. Yeah, he'll be the only referee, the only regular referee that breaks the picket line and referees matches. And then when it comes to the pay-per-view with the big six-pack challenge, that's where we can have the big schmas where they pull him out and beat the crap out of him. I was like, okay, whatever you want.
Oh man, that's how we'll end this interview. Oh man, Jimmy, thank you so much. This has been one of the coolest interviews I had a chance to do, and we'll definitely be catching up for sure.
Thank you, Derek. It was my pleasure. It's good to talk to you, man.
Likewise.